We now have a verdict in the Harvey Weinstein rape trial. Joining me right now is CNN legal analyst Paul Callan, also Brian Stelter, host of Reliable Sources. We are waiting, as we were told from Gene Casares, just to fill everybody in. The judge has said there is a verdict. We are waiting for it to come out. There is a period of time that transpires before the verdict is reached. The letter is sent to the judge, and then it is read in court. We're going to bring that to everybody as soon as it happens. Let's talk about where things were left on Friday and what we could be looking at right here. We have the breaking news in. Let me go to Gene Casares now. Sorry, everybody. Gene is outside the courtroom. Gene, what do you have?
All right, this is what we have on count 1, which is predatory sexual assault, not guilty. Count 2, which is criminal sexual act in the first degree, guilty. That is a criminal sexual act against Miriam Haley. Count 3, predatory sexual assault, not guilty. Count 4, rape in the first degree against Jessica Mann, not guilty. Count 5, rape in the third degree, guilty. There are 2 guilty convictions here. Count 2, criminal sexual act in the first degree, which is 5 to 25 years in prison. And count 5, which is rape in the third degree, which can be probationary, up to 4 years in prison. Kate?
Gene, thank you so very much. Sticking with me. Paul Callan, you just heard that. What's your reaction to this?
Well, let's talk about the difference between the charges here. Those charges that he was acquitted on, the predatory sexual act charges, are so serious that some lawyers would compare them to murder counts. They're A felonies. He could have gotten a life sentence on both of those.
So both of those are not guilty. Guys, if we can throw up the counts so we can talk this through for everyone, as it can get confusing as there's so much going on here, that would be great. So 1 in 3 not guilty, as Gene Casares has just reported. Continue.
And those counts, by the way, required the jury to believe that he had engaged in improper sexual conduct with Jessica Mann and Miriam Haley, and that the same thing or a similar kind of thing had happened to Annabelle Sciorra. That would have made it predatory and would have raised it to a life sentence, a felony.
Let me start right there. Does that surprise you that they came back with not guilty on those two most severe charges?
Well, it doesn't surprise me given the question that was asked on Friday. You remember they hinted that they may have reached a conclusion on some counts, but not on the predatories.
Yeah, they asked the judge on Friday specifically, can we be hung on count 1 and or 3 and unanimous on others? That was their question.
Right. So that meant that they had to have believed Jessica Mann or Miriam Haley on some of the lesser counts. Now, moving on to the really serious, and these are serious counts. These lesser counts are not a walk in the park. Okay. One of the counts, the count involving Miriam Haley, calls for a sentence of 5 to 25 years in prison for Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. The second count, which is rape in the third degree. Now, the difference between rape in the first and rape in the third is rape in the first is a forcible rape. The jury didn't believe that there was a forcible rape here of Jessica Mann, but they did believe that he had sex with her without her consent. That lowers it to rape in the third degree. You can actually get probation on that count or up to 4 years in prison. So that's what he's facing, up to 25 years in prison on one count and up to 4 years in prison on count number 2.
Brian, stick with me for 1 second. Let me just ask the control room. Is Gene still standing by? Let me know if Gene's still standing by to join the conversation. Gene, let me bring you back in. We have this verdict now, Gene. Do we know what is happening in court, if anything, at this moment, or any reaction in the courtroom when this was read?
No, we don't have that yet. We do have our 2 producers in that courtroom, but what is interesting here is that since there is a conviction routinely, and Paul, I'm sure, has experienced this so many times, the prosecutor can ask to remand Harvey Weinstein into custody. He has been free on bond for this entire time since he was charged, and the length of this trial. Remember, he was charged several years ago when this all began, and so they could be asked that. The defense will counter that, saying that he has always shown up to court. There is not a risk of flight, and these are not the most serious felonies, and they will battle that out. Now, I think the looming question is, will the Los Angeles charges come into play here? Because the first day of jury selection here in New York, he was charged criminally, a big press conference, with crimes sexual in nature in Los Angeles. So LA is just really holding off until this case is concluded. And will he be allowed to turn himself in, or will they arrest him and remand him into custody for Los Angeles?
Absolutely. Jean, stick with me. Again, everyone, the breaking news is Harvey Weinstein is found guilty on 2 counts in this trial that has been ongoing for weeks now, in jury deliberation that had just today entered its 2nd week. Brian Stelter is here as well. Conviction is important. It's an answer. But I think we can't also lose the impact of what Harvey Weinstein's case and how it came about, and now what this conviction means for the world.
For the world.
Yes.
Yeah, this is vindication and validation for these victims in this specific criminal trial. But it is also a statement for, and I'm not exaggerating, Kate, millions of victims of sex crimes in this country and around the world. So why is that? Well, it's because Harvey Weinstein was the first domino in what we now know as the global Me Too movement. There was before that New York Times story about Harvey Weinstein, and there was after. The New York Times, the New Yorker, Ronan Farrow, this speaks to the power of journalism, that this case was opened up and that Harvey Weinstein was brought into court and that he is now going to be going to prison. It speaks to the power of journalism and to the court system, and it speaks to the voices, these voices that were silenced for decades. Yes. Let's remember, there were rumors about Harvey Weinstein 20 years ago. He buried those secrets. He paid off women. He kept people silent. He threatened, he cajoled, he did whatever he had to do to keep those secrets. And finally, today, for the first time, he's being held accountable.
And in a courtroom, a jury of their peers says, we hear you, to these women.
And we believe you.
And we believe
you. Now,
you.
yes, these are 2 of the lesser charges, but as you said, Paul, he's going to be facing prison time. This is a man who thought he was untouchable.
And acted that way.
And thought he could do whatever he wanted to anybody else. I'll never forget the day that Ronan Farrow asked me, have you heard rumors about Harvey Weinstein? You know, this was an investigation going on for the better part of 2017. And when those stories hit in October 2017, the world did change. Yeah. And I think I'm seeing online a lot of people who have no connection to Harvey Weinstein, but have had these experiences in their own lives saying, I feel something today. I feel that I've been heard today.
Paul, what happens now? We have to guess and assume that he will appeal.
Yes.
What happens?
Well, I think we have to figure out, first of all, are they going to slap the cuffs on him and put him in jail today? Right. And I will tell you, having stood next to defendants in that very courtroom myself, customarily, a felon facing this kind of a serious charge and the sentences that he's facing would be remanded to prison at this moment.
Would you be more surprised if he was able to walk out of court today?
I would be frankly shocked, because he's facing, as I said before, as much as 25 years in prison on these 2 charges, and he's facing also California charges. Right. One of the things the judge looks at is the motivation to flee. Obviously, he has a tremendous motivation to flee because he's got these major cases in both states. Now, on the appellate issue, his lawyers are looking at one big issue, one important issue, and that is there was a juror who was seated over their objection who hinted that she was writing a book that might be involved with older men having sex and consent issues with younger women. That's going to be a focus of the appeal.
Yeah, but our colleague Chloe Mellis reports that Weinstein's been preparing for the possibility of prison, even talking to a coach about what it might be like. He was apparently very nervous in recent days, and he should have been.